Hello, I'm Jennifer Kavanagh, and this is Between Worlds for May 14th. In the very wee hours of the night, it is actually 12:33 a.m. So about an hour ago, I was in a very deep dream state and was awakened and not able to go back to sleep. And in fact, my whole family woke up, so it was kind of bizarre in the middle of the night. But when I woke, I had fallen asleep fairly early, but it felt like I had slept the entire night. I was shocked that it was only 11:30. I thought it was actually going to be 5 a.m. when I woke up. So anyhow, long story short, um, after that, I started receiving some communication from someone who has identified themselves as a member of the Federation of Light, Starship Commander Xenanon B, for whatever that is worth to anybody out there. And they're showing me something that feels very specific to Canada and Canadians right now. And in fact, I can't go back to sleep unless I get this out here. So here it is. So I'm first being shown an image, northern Canada. So they're showing me the areas basically from Ontario to Alberta and the northern regions, so the less populated regions. And I keep hearing the word standoff. They're giving me this image of a male being, we'll say. I don't know if they're human or non-human, it's hard to tell. And it feels like they're holding people hostage, is the word I want to use. And there's some kind of standoff between different forces up there. So there's something going on, whether in the 3D or in another realm, I don't know, but there's some kind of standoff going on there. I'm not getting much more detail, and I don't think we really need or want much more detail than that. But I do believe it's related perhaps to some of the people who are younger than adults, as I heard David Wilcox say earlier this evening. So the main message that I'm being asked to share with Canadians specifically is around fear. So as they were showing me this image of standoff, I was asking, okay, well, what do you want me to do with that? And they said, as Canadians, we are really struggling with facing our fears. And think about this for a moment. So when you were a child and you were going to bed, and perhaps you were afraid of the dark, or maybe you were afraid of monsters, or maybe you had some fear. Most children have some kind of fear around bedtime. And ask yourself, think back to when you were a child and you were afraid of the dark, we'll say. What did you do? Did you, close your eyes and plug your ears and pretend that it wasn't dark and there was nothing scary at all? Did you hide under your blankets? Did you run away and go to your parents or go to another room? Or did you just turn the light on? And what I was being told, shared, was that many of us are afraid to turn the light on. The fear is so consuming that we actually will not turn the light on. And there's so much power in doing that. When we turn the light on, we can see what's in the dark because it's not in the dark anymore. And they're saying, yeah, there's some monsters in there. There's some monsters in that darkness, but we need to see them. It's really important that we see them and we face them and we know what we're dealing with, and we go through all the emotions associated with seeing them in their full form, no matter how scary that form is. Because right now, what's happening is a large majority of us are closing our eyes, hiding under the covers, or running away. And all that does is feed the fear. And these monsters that are waiting in the corners, in the shadows, that's what they need. That's what they thrive on. That's how they gain their power, is by us being too afraid to look at them, by being too afraid to acknowledge that there's even the possibility that they exist. And so in that process of doing that, we actually give them more power. And our fear gets fueled, but it gets fueled in our subconscious mind. And it creates this ongoing fear. And in the process, we lose some of our own personal power. So there's this real need to turn the light on. It's time for us to see all of the secrets, all of the monsters that have been waiting in the corner. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And there's a reason that we're struggling with this. I've also been told that the situations that we're in right now, these highly pressurized situations, are going to continue to be pressurized. They're going to continue to be pressurized because every time that, they're giving me the image of a vice grip. Every time you tighten that vice grip a little bit more, we get more and more pressure. And while some of us are experiencing a lot of pressure already, which I'll come to, and because we've experienced that, that's why we are turning that light on. We are starting to look around and notice what those monsters are and face them. But there's a lot of people who haven't yet experienced enough pressure, they're saying. So there's more pressure to come. And that concerns me a little bit, because those of us who, have turned the light on already will say, the pressure isn't really helping us. In fact, in some ways, it's making things really scary. But they're saying there's a reason for that fear to be there. We have a couple of choices timeline-wise. So one timeline option is to actually live out all of this, of where it seems we're headed, to physically live it out. Another option, which I believe is the timeline that we're on, is to face the fear of it, to experience the grief of it without physically experiencing it, right? Think about this for a second. You can potentially watch a scenario on TV, and if you've watched someone experience great loss or harm on a movie, for example, and you start crying and you start thinking about how challenging that would be and how that would affect your life and how you would be different because of it. You haven't actually experienced that event, but you've watched it and you've grieved it and you felt the emotions of it. And that's what I think is happening here, is that yes, there is pressure and there's some things happening, but the illusion is greater than the reality. And what we are seeing, we're seeing for a reason. And for those of you who are having fear around it, there's a reason for that, because by experiencing that fear in this way, perhaps you won't need to experience it in the physical form, because you are already going through the motions of changing yourself. And when we look at the ascension, the evolution of the soul, there is this period of the dark night, night as in night sky, not as in Prince Night. And this dark night of the soul is, in some ways, it's about a death, right? A death of the old self, a death of our old view of the world, a death of how we've perceived things in the past. And it's coming to terms with all of the darkness in those things. It's coming to terms with all of that, of stepping fully into that dark bedroom, knowing that the monsters live there, and finding your way to the light switch. And even when the light switch turns on and you see what's waiting in the shadows, it doesn't mean that the fear ends. It really doesn't. But it means that you have overcome the, we'll say, what's the word I'm looking for? Response, the immediate response of just running away or hiding. And you stand there and you look at those monsters and you realize that you are more powerful, that perhaps you don't need to be afraid of them. And even by turning those lights on, they may even become afraid of you, because they see how much more powerful you are in the light, so to speak. So there is this kind of hero's journey evolution of the soul that requires us to face that and to experience those fears, but perhaps maybe not experience them in the physical. And one of the first messages I received from my guides a while ago is that this is going to be scary. It's going to be scarier than anything you've ever experienced or imagined in your life, but know that it is not real. Know that it is not happening in the sense that you're moving towards an apocalypse, we'll say, but we need to recognize where this can go, where it could go, and all the emotions we have with that, so that as we build these new communities, these new ways of living, we make sure that we don't fall into those old traps. We make sure there's no darkness hiding in the shadows. Does that make sense? The other thing that I asked is, since, as I do, sometimes I get in trouble when I ask more questions, but I'm always like, well, since we're talking, can I ask a few more questions? And I asked the question, why have the small business owners been targeted? Why have small businesses been targeted in this whole thing? You know, I have my own theories as we've moved through this process, but you know, what's your reason for it? And this is what I was told. Small business owners were targeted because they're less ingrained in the system, or the, you know, for lack of better terms, brainwashing. I don't like to use that term, but let's just turn the light on. And so because small business owners in a lot of ways have already been one step removed from the system and thinking in the system's viewpoint, so by pressurizing the small business owners, it was almost like catching the low-hanging fruit. Let's get the people who are close to turning that light on to turn the light on, instead of focusing on the people who are maybe going to take a little bit longer. Let's see if we can really pressurize these people first, because there's a higher chance that they will open their eyes and see what's going on, because of the unique situation that they're in, because they're not fully engulfed in this illusion of the systems that already exist in the world. So that was part of the reason why they started with the small business owners. And if you look around, I mean, most of us aren't touting that we're small business owners, but a lot of the people that are looking at what is going on here and how does it affect things and what do we need to do, a lot of them are small business owners because they've been pressurized. And there's a big component here with the pressurization around money. And this has been, the money has been coming for a couple of years for some of us, but what I was told is that money is a big part of this process. And in a lot of ways, money has been worshipped almost as a religion. Money has become a worshiping process and a religion in its own right. And that has contributed to us kind of closing our eyes or hiding under the covers and facing some of these demons that are existing in our world, because we feel this attachment to money. And so money, in a way, has made us blind. And by pressurizing the money system, it takes away that blindness. It takes away as well our attachment to it in the way that we have been so fully driven by it in many ways. So many of us often make our decisions based on the financial impacts first. And we don't want to believe that, but it is the reality for many of us. And it, in some ways, has made our lives more comfortable. And by doing so, we don't want to fall out of that comfort. So there's a big process here about humanity working through our relationship with money and working through how we prioritize it in our lives. And when we suffer, we'll say, financially, as many people are right now, we learn to exist and live and survive without it as the primary driver. Now, I'm not saying at this point in time that many people can survive without some money, but it changes your worldview. it changes how you perceive things. It changes how you interact with other people, other businesses, which are ultimately human beings behind most of them, at least the smaller and medium-sized businesses. So there's work to be done, and there's more coming in that regard. And if you haven't examined your relationship with money yet, it's going to be coming. And there's going to be more pressurization. And so as they say, this vice grip tightening, it's going to continue to tighten. It hasn't quite yet fully hit, they're saying, the people who perhaps work in more comfortable jobs, more stable jobs, we'll say. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but they just said for now, the vice grip has really been focused on the people that are outside the traditional system, or one foot outside the system, and it hasn't yet had a full impact on those who are 2 feet in. And then I also asked about the jibby jab and what's going on with that, because there's a lot of questions happening about that. What was really interesting is they used the term off-gassing. And this is a term that another intuitive friend of mine, Diane with Angel Cup Readings, has also been given, is off-gassing. And I was told that there's an off-gassing period for 3 to 4 weeks. And I was given the image of like painting, when you paint and there's the fumes that come off the paint. And they kept saying lead paint, lead paint. And check out Amazing Polly, because I think she recently had something on there about iron, but that's just popping in now. They're telling me to dig into that, so I'll dig into that later and give an update. But this concept of these fumes, right? And so you'd want to have the windows open, or you wouldn't want to necessarily be directly breathing in those fumes. And here's the part that's interesting. Because I've been questioning the timing of this, and I know other people are as well, and what exactly is happening. So after the 4 weeks, they gave me this image of an antenna and inside the body. And this antenna was like a radio antenna or a Wi-Fi antenna. And after the off-gassing period subsides or subdues, this antenna turns on somehow, and then it's like a digital transmission. So it goes from like a chemical transition to a digital transmission. Don't ask me how that works. It's it's almost 1 a.m. and so I'm just giving you what I've been shown. I haven't had a lot of time to really sit and analyze it or dig deeper into it. I have some theories, but I'll save those for until I can look into them a little bit deeper. So there's that, and then there's something that happens between 1 and 2. So I got the impression that the off-gassing and then the antenna activating starts in after 1. And then after 2, there's something more significant that happens there. And it wasn't looking that positive from a physical standpoint, but I didn't get much information. They were focusing on 1. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess I could say. And we'll continue on as everybody else is doing to get any information on that as we can. And the last question that I asked them was, is there anything else that I need to share so that I can get some sleep tonight? And what they had said is, hold on. We are heading into a bumpy ride. And I was given the image of being on a spaceship. I can only relate it to being on an airplane and hitting some really bad turbulence. And essentially they said, the next couple of months are going to be rough. They're going to be rough. But sometimes if you know that you're hitting turbulence and you know that it's okay and you know that the airplane is going to make it, then the turbulence isn't so bad. The main key message is that Up here in the great north, we need to turn the light on. And we need to start looking. We need to start facing our fears, because the more that we hide our heads under the covers and refuse to look at this, the longer it's going to take and the more pressure we're going to have to experience. And we're not at enough percentage. We don't need everybody to do it, but we need some more to have that courage. So, if things are feeling a little bit off, if you're starting to question things, or if somebody brings something up and it's making you feel uncomfortable, notice how you just turn off. Okay. And this happened to me actually in this transmission. They started mentioning children, and that we need to be really, really on guard with our children. And immediately, I don't know what happened. I lost the transmission. It was like I went into an entirely other mind space. And then when I came back, I was like, whoa, what happened? And they said, because they hit that trigger point, that my mind just boom, shut off. And so we need to notice where we're shutting off, where we're afraid to talk about things, where we're afraid to look at things, and we need to come back. And if you need someone to hold your hand, or you need someone to sit with you, I'm happy to do that. And there's a very important role for those of you who are parents, to really be able to find the courage to do this, because there's something going on there where we need to be aware. We need to be aware right now. And like I said, I haven't pulled in that full transmission. I got it. They've told me it's in there. And I'm just hesitating to share it in this forum as well. But be on guard, as our anthem says, and turn the light on. Okay. Look at what you are afraid to look at, and by looking at it, the fear will start to dissipate. It's not going to make it any less ugly. It's not going to make it any less awful, but it will allow us to develop that courage that we need to gain our power back, and to lessen the power of whatever these monsters are that are waiting in our corners. Okay. There's something to do with transportation and logistics of we'll say human beings being moved across these northern regions. That's all I know. That's all I can say. And it's not going to be pleasant. We're going to have some negative emotions, and some grief, and some anger, and some upset stomachs when we learn this. But we have to see it. We have to see it. And so this is a seed. Some of you will get it. Some of you have already stopped listening at this point. And that's okay. I'm just being asked to put that seed, to plant this seed of thought in consciousness. So even if only one of you makes it to the end of this video, I will have done my job, and we'll let it spread through collective consciousness from there. So I hope that you all sleep well, drink water, pay attention to your dreams, keep talking, keep keeping those lines of communication open with whoever is willing, and know that you can always reach out to me if you have questions, or you want to talk, or you just need to express whatever emotions it is that you're feeling. Have a beautiful evening. Love to you all.